This is part 2 of the ward data analysis for the survey conducted in March of 2016. I'm going to pick up where we left off with the reasons why people responded the way they did for the question on growth, whether or not they desire growth. And I was finishing up explaining in the last video that the different star colors mean different things. So there are no cases where 100%, it's 100% of the folks are saying no, but by and large, we're talking very, very strong majority, over 65%, that type of thing, with the colors. So when I say largely answered no, these folks largely answered no, and their reason they said no was because of too much density or development can cause density. Same thing with the purple stars, which equals largely answered yes to commercial, which you can see some of their answers there were they want responsible commercial development. More commercial development means more taxes for the city. And for both, the blue star represents those who largely answered yes to both residential and commercial growth, and the yellow star represents largely those who said yes to growth for residential growth. So mainly revolving around needing a variety of housing additional to what we have, need more senior housing, which kind of goes along the same lines, and then letting more residents enjoy Worthington was the general sense there. So the takeaways to the comments, that the largest consistently noted comments were regarding density, responsible development, and tax base. Then there was a question about acceptable heights along High Street for commercial buildings, and you can see 3 stories is a pretty clear winner there, with almost 50% of people. And if you combine the two of them, you have about 3/4 of the folks find that 2 or 3 stories is an acceptable height for new developments for commercial. And again, these are consistent numbers throughout all cross sections of responses, including the whether or not somebody wants growth, or how familiar they are with the plans that we discussed earlier. Second portion of that is what type of setbacks would you prefer for new development. And we gave examples, 4 different examples of types. So fresh time, similar to fresh time setback, a setback similar to Anthem on High Street there, Old Worthington setbacks, which is right on the sidewalk, and then Ethan Allen, which has a setback behind a parking lot. And based on the tool, which I'll show you here in a second, participants had to rank based on their position. So first position was top level of interest. Second position was somewhat preferred. Third position was not likely preferred, and then fourth position was not at all preferred. So to show you kind of an example of what that looks like, here's the back end tool. You can see here that between first and second position, here's first position here, second position, third position, and fourth position. And between what we're looking at here is the cutoff line between the first and second position versus the third and fourth position. So if we look at that cutoff line, and we see some pretty clear winners if we combine the colors, which are the different responses. This being the fresh time, this being the darker green here being the Anthem space, and then less people desire the Ethan Allen type of setback, and then the Old Worthington setback is also less desired. So if we go back to the analysis, this would be based off of 200%, because we're taking both the first position and the second position. So if you combine 100% plus 100% of the participants, you have 200%. So you can see that 75% or so out of the 200% prefer the fresh time type of setback. Again, 62% or so like the Anthem type of setback, and then we have under 40% and under 30% prefer the Old Worthington and Ethan Allen setbacks respectively. So the takeaway there, also with that the same type of tool with the positioning, you have the parking lots. What type of parking would they prefer? We take the same type of tool analysis and we combine it into 200%. We see a pretty clear winner there with the surface parking behind the buildings, which again is similar to the Fresh Time or the Anthem building where the parking is behind the building. We see underground parking as a somewhat of a slight preference, and then least preferred would be the above ground parking deck, or the parking between High Street and the building. Again, similar to the Ethan Allen building. The takeaways there would be that it was pretty clear that Fresh Time setbacks or the Anthem setbacks were preferred to the Old Worthington or Ethan Allen setbacks. And also with that same tool, it was pretty clear that that surface parking behind the buildings or underground parking were preferred to parking decks or parking between High Street and the building. Hopefully that makes some sense. Then they had a question about what type of retail space would be preferred on the UMCH property for any type of retail amenity, and we see of the options that were given, we have restaurants and specialty foods taking first and second position as what I would call clear winners. Then these are somewhat preferred with home goods, clothing, arts, crafts. What's not preferred, we start to work over here with the dried goods. The other category, which there were a whole plethora, a whole variety of things on the other category, and then pet store and jewelry took a very low desire rate. So the takeaway there is we know that Worthingtonians like food and we like to eat. So hey, there's some restaurants there, particularly family casual, which were mentioned in the comments. Ethnic restaurants were also identified in the comment section. Specialty food, which I misspelled there, not desired. We know people don't want jewelry stores, pet stores, dry goods. Another set of questions: rank the statements that best represent your opinion for citywide development. Now we branch outside of the UMCH property into citywide development, which we'll then use to cross-reference against the UMCH type of development, so specific to that property. So we see here that people prefer the owner-occupied multi-story condos before they prefer any other type of mixed use or apartment. There would be a preference to not build any type of apartment or condo multi-story versus the mixed use or the apartments. Similar outcomes here with the UMCH site specific, with the owner-occupied multi-story condos first, then nothing, and then the mixed use in apartments after the nothing. So based on that tool, it was pretty clear that that apartments are not desired, taking third place or fourth place, which are the least desired places and positions in nearly all responses. The building nothing is preferred to building apartments or mixed use condos apartment mix. In your opinion, what is the acceptable maximum number of owner-occupied multi-story condos if they are built on 10 to 15 acres, which was part of the LC June 2015 plan? We do have a little asterisk here that you notice the wording apartments as part of the options on the online survey was not the same, not consistent with the question. So I did make that as an asterisk. So please note that the answer is a different option than the actual question. So that's going to come back in the analysis of the takeaway. We can't, well, I'll talk about that in a moment. So in your opinion, what's the acceptable maximum number of apartment buildings if they're built based on units. And we see here that the subsection that did answer this question, the winner slightly is those who chose the 100 or 200 units maximum to be built. And then over here we see that they prefer no apartments at all, and this is actually 31%. I don't know why I typed that in there, so sorry about that. So that was actually 31%, so slightly less than the 100 to 200 units. And also for apartment buildings, what's the acceptable height? Again, this is a subsection of people who answered. People who would be okay with apartments moved on to these questions. People who are not okay with apartments or condos did not answer these questions. And we see that that 3 stories and 2 stories come away as the clear winners there combined versus the 4 and 5 stories combined. So the takeaways, again, we have an asterisk down here that correlates to the asterisk that I mentioned 3 slides ago. And but up here we have, of the 51% who are okay with multi-story condos, 31% do not want apartments. So that we can take away as a clear indication that data was not skewed or error at all. So then we have 29% chose the 100 to 200 units for multi-unit condos. 18% chose 100 to 200 units. So again, the smaller amount, less dense unit. If they're okay with the multi-unit complex, then they do want the lower amount of units and the lower density. We have 64% coming back to what might be an error. So I combined condos and or apartments because we can't say specifically condos or apartments because the text had the error in it. It wasn't consistent with the wording. So, but we can say that 64% combined do not want condos and or apartments. That's the takeaway there. And those who do want apartments specifically, or are okay with apartments rather, not necessarily wanting them, the majority of them prefer no more than 2 or 3 stories. The question of whether the city needs more variety of housing stock, the 4 and 5 stars is what we're looking at here, with the answer being agree or strongly agree. These folks strongly disagree or disagree. These people are somewhat neutral, don't really know how to answer that one. But if we look over here, we see a majority of folks who agree or strongly agree with that statement. Again, we have a subset of folks who answered this question. The city needs a complete care facility similar to the Wesley Glen down by Graceland, which was not identified specifically as other than the wording I think we put as a pretext to this question was it just gave some sort of example similar to the Wesley Glen model of complete care. Mixed bag here, but close to a majority of folks agree or strongly agree with that statement. So what types of populations do we want? Well, aging population. I'm going to stop the slide right here because I want to spend a little bit more time, so please go on to slide video presentation part 3.